Hello, welcome back to Last of Us Part 2 podcast. Part 2, podcast harder.
Oh, yeah. Last of Us. So it's Last of Us Part 2, Part 2. That's
certainly is.
Yeah.
Unless you called it Chapter 2, but that's just stupid.
Yeah.
That's
I like Part 2, Part 2. It's like double the awesome.
Podcast harder. Yeah, we're going to feel like a TV dinner in this one. Or was that in the first one? I can't remember which.
Both, I think, probably.
You do go through air vents in this film.
You do.
This game, not film.
Yeah.
So
well, it feels like it. That's the point.
Like
it feels like a film, doesn't
it?
Yeah.
I'm now imagining Last of Us 2 with Bruce Willis as like the main character.
With just all the events, but just
every character is Bruce Willis.
Just with John McClane, yeah.
I'd play that still.
Does that mean Alan? Abby would be Alan Rickman.
Oh my god. I think we've just created the ultimate version of Last of Us 2.
Let's do it.
So any hackers out there, feel free to start coding that. But of course you owe us the money and the rights that you make. Anyway, so this is a completely spoiler podcast because we're going to be talking about the rest of the game that we didn't discuss last time. We got up to, spoiler warning, the bit where Dina reveals that she's pregnant. We're going to be going on from there, talking about any gameplay changes, some of the boss battles, and some of the story, and of course, the ending.
Ooh.
So, where does it go? Start off with gameplay, actually. Let's go for gameplay for the whole game, and we'll talk about a few of the key moments that were really good.
Okay.
So, how do you think the gameplay changed after Dina's pregnancy was revealed?
Yeah, it's good because there are like massive changes. I mean, you do kind of continue to kind of go from zone to zone. You know, you can either sneak through or you can go, guns blazing, but it's, slightly more rewarding to do it stealthy. But there's kind of little additions, so the enemies develop. You get different groups coming in. The scars turn up.
Yes, yeah, they start turning up, don't they? And then you start getting like arrows in the shoulder that you have to pull out, otherwise you can't. I think you can't shoot when it's in there.
No, you're and you're kind of down on the ground. I think you can just crawl.
Right.
So, which is quite challenging when you've got 3 or 4 closing in on you, and you're trying desperately to yank this arrow out of you. Fuck. And then obviously the infected kind of develop. You get new infected.
Yeah, we had. I think they were in it before, but you had the exploding ones.
I don't know if they were in the first one. I don't remember
them being in the first one.
I remember the bloaters being in it.
Yeah,
but
although they only seem to be in this twice. The bloaters.
Yeah, but both times they are horrendous to fight.
Did you get caught by any? Remember in the first one, they grabbed Joel's head, grabbed him between his mouth, and just rip his face apart.
No, I got kind of basically charred through a wall with one.
Oh, nice.
It kind of, because it demolishes.
Oh wait, yeah.
It demolishes the wall, but I was in front of the wall, so I kind of
just like.
Cannon fodder essentially. But no, I did in the first one. Yeah, the animations are pretty disgusting.
Yeah, they definitely did more of those in this one. So this is jumping. Well, actually, we'll cover that in a minute. But there's one where literally it grabs your head and like twists your body and pulls your head off. Oh, it's just like damn.
Yeah,
it's gonna be crazy. But cool. Yeah. So gameplay wise, after Dina's pregnancy reveal, doesn't really change that much. It kind of just stays as The Last of Us does. Like bigger, more intensive combat arenas, shall we call them. You have to really think about how you're going to attack everybody, because pretty much going in guns blazing does get your ass kicked quite a lot in this one. You can do it, it's just even harder than the first. And you have to start utilising like prone a lot more. You start using your silencer. Ellie gets a bow and arrow a bit later on, which admittedly I barely used in this one because, well, you switched to Abby not long after getting it.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But yeah, you spend I think the rest of the gameplay as Ellie is entirely within Seattle, which is all within the buildings, and then you slowly work your way towards the Ferris wheel first, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then you work your way into the aquarium where you start looking for Abby again.
Yeah.
that's pretty much gameplay. That's it, really, up until the big middle bit. So we'll cover the rest of the story. So, how do you feel? What do you think of Ellie's journey after Dina's pregnancy?
It's a mad one, because now it's probably about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks since I've played it, and I'm still processing it. And my opinion keeps changing. I wouldn't say I was negative, but I was slightly negative about some of the stuff. And some of it I'm still not entirely sure about, but mainly I thought it was really impressive. And it particularly comes together in the last act, I think.
Yeah.
In fact, the first part of the game and the end part of the game are pitch perfect for me.
Yeah, it's kind of the middle where it
There's
dips
a
a bit.
slight lull in the middle.
It's a valley of the game.
Yes.
It dips in the middle, but great at the other two ends.
I mean, I think I liked all of Ellie's storyline. I mean, because obviously you've got that investment anyway from the first game. And so there wasn't a bit of that I didn't really enjoy. I thought it had some nice little twists. Obviously, you kind of get the main big twist early on, but there's some nice little kind of story beats.
Yeah. Although Joel's death is by far the biggest thing in the game, but that informs everything else that happens.
Yeah.
So it has to be the biggest thing. But yeah, I felt Ellie's story the entire way through was really engaging, and it didn't really have a dull moment for me.
No.
And her story of hunting down all of Abby's friends to get to Abby, when you're doing it, you feel like, yeah, fucking get him. Like, stab him, kill that girl with Vita, because she would not have a Vita in like 35 years' time, if the battery had even lasted that long. That section of the game I think is really good, and the story stays like really good all the way through, and you keep that hatred for Abby the whole way through.
Yeah.
And then you get to... So, throughout all this, you bump into Jesse as well. Jesse comes up to join you.
Yep.
And we see one of the trailer tricks where they swapped out Joel's body and voice for Jesse's, and it turns out it's actually Jesse who's in that scene. And, yeah, then after... Again, not really much happens story-wise as such, but it all kind of connects together at the end. You work your way back to the theatre after you've... Oh, actually, no. Got to cover the bit in the aquarium first. So Abby's meant to be in the aquarium. You work your way there, and then you get attacked by a dog, which you stab with a knife, which for some reason Ellie will never do with any other dog, which really annoys me, because the dogs are a pain in the ass in this game.
Yeah.
And she'll only ever like go, no, I don't want to get attacked by the dog, and then push it off, instead of going, oh wait, I have a knife. But this specific dog, this one dog where if she didn't kill it would have probably helped, she has her knife all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So she kills the dog, and then you wander through into a different part of the aquarium, and I've already forgotten his name. Owen is there, along with lady that I can't remember the name of.
I think this is the problem though.
Yeah.
Which is in itself. I mean, we not long ago talked about them and their names, and kind of instantly forgotten. And I think that's because their characters are a bit weak.
Yeah, they're not really needed, to be honest. But,
no.
I mean, they are for some of Abby's motivations, but they didn't flesh them out enough. But
no, yeah.
Basically, Ellie kills Owen and Mel, and then I think Owen says something to make her go and check Mel's body to find out that she was pregnant.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, because I don't know why she would have checked her body otherwise. But yeah, she goes over to Owen. Owen like gurgles something through blood, and then she goes over and checks Mel's body, and that's when she freaks out. I think Ellie kind of realizes that maybe she's taking it too far at that point, and that's when she goes back to the theatre. And when do you meet Tommy as well? I can't remember how Ellie bumps into him.
Tommy's kind of in and out of it. He drops in and out of it.
Does he just show up at the theatre?
He shows up now and again. Yeah. He turns up at that point when she goes back to the theatre. But it's interesting because he's kind of on his own vendetta quest. Yeah. Which I found quite a fascinating addition.
Yeah.
Because I would
love to play DLC where you play as him.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, right. Because from the start of the game you think, okay, so Tommy he initially goes off first, and then Ellie's following him and kind of seeing the kind of path of destruction he's carving. So I thought there'd be a natural meeting point, and then because Naughty Dog always do people in pairs, that you'd be with Tommy.
Yeah.
But instead, Tommy's kind of just off on a different tangent. And I really like that.
Yeah,
because
he's a bit of a badass in this game.
Yeah, he is, and he kind of pops in and out at kind of key points in a really kind of interesting way.
Yeah, and you get to see... You never really fully get to see what he does. You only see it from the people he's attacking, or Ellie's perspective, which is interesting. But yeah, I would love some DLC. I know Naughty Dog has said they're not doing DLC, but every company says that. Until the big bucks start coming in.
Yeah, right. And that's true.
And it would work, because obviously in the first game, Joel was the main character and Ellie got the DLC. This time Ellie's the main character and Tommy can be the DLC.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have to be that long, but I'd just love to see that side of the story.
Yeah, well, Left Behind wasn't very long, but it was just a nice little bit of kind of story and a bit of context.
Or they could go full hog and do an Uncharted Lost Legacy type thing.
Wow,
do an entire sort of full game, but not quite.
Yeah, see, I initially I wouldn't be keen on that initially, but if it was that, and it was Tommy, then that's different. Yeah,
I'd be up for that. But yes, anyway, back to the theatre. So yeah, I can't quite remember how you meet up with Tommy, but I'm pretty sure he just shows up at the theatre.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he does.
Yeah. Get back to the theatre, and you... Oh wait, there was one more gameplay thing I want to cover while we're as Ellie. I don't like the vehicle sections in this game, because they completely take me out of the realism of the game.
Because of the unlimited ammo.
It's like, where are you getting these bullets from? Because I'm just there going bang, 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 bang. And it's like, I understand you want to do an action scene and limiting you on bullets wouldn't really work in a gameplay perspective. But just chuck in, I don't know, there's a big crate of ammo next to her on the seat or something. Yeah. And then she reaches back to reload or something. That would be fine. But yeah, that works in I don't know, like Gears of War, where yes, they do have an abundance of ammo with their giant armor suits. But yeah, when I can only carry one mag in my gun and then a box of ammo in my bag, but when I get into a vehicle I have unlimited ammo. It just takes me out of it every time, and it doesn't need it. Those sequences were never impressive enough for me to be like, oh, that was needed in the game. Like the bit when you're in the truck with Jesse and drive along. If that had just been a cutscene, I wouldn't have been bothered. I didn't. Although yes, I'd prefer the interaction, but if it breaks the immersion, I think that's where is it really needed? But
weirdly enough, as well, I don't know if you remember, but when you play later as Abby, there's a bit where you're in a scar camp
with the horse.
With the horse,
yeah.
And it uses up your ammo
and
takes your health.
Yeah.
Which is good, but because I was used to it not doing that...
You went nuts.
I went nuts, and I was like, oh great, I've got no health, I've got no ammo, and now I've got to kind of get out of the situation.
Yeah, I noticed that my pistol had no bullets left when I finished. I was like, oh, cool.
Thanks for telling me. Yeah.
But yeah, other than that though, I think Ellie's section of the game is really good. Story, gameplay... minor hiccups, but every game has them. For all those people on Metacritic giving it a 0 because anything in this game they didn't like, it's just annoying. But
yes.
Yeah.
Anyway,
theatre again. So yeah, you come back to the theatre, you sleep another night, and then you wake up and Tommy is getting attacked by somebody, and Ellie and Jesse burst into the room. Jesse gets his face blown off, basically. He gets a bullet through the face. Yeah. And then it's Abby beating the shit out of Tommy. And then she's basically got Ellie at gunpoint, gets Ellie to throw the gun away. Then basically it cuts then. And then you start playing as Abby for basically the rest of the game, which was a surprise.
Pretty much. I think it's... I think it might be slightly more time as Ellie, but it's...
I think so, yeah.
It's very, very close.
Yeah.
It's quite an extended bit as Abby, actually.
So... how did you feel about playing Abby?
I think, like most people, initially the investment just wasn't there because you've spent
the entire game hating her.
Up until that point, you just despise her. the gameplay wise, I really enjoyed that
Yeah.
aspect because she's a heavy hitter.
Her
She's,
fucking beefiness was ridiculous.
exactly, and there's a different fighting style, and in a painful way, it's more like Joel's, which adds,
Yeah.
in a kind of story sense, adds salt to the wounds.
Yeah.
But it is satisfying at the same time, and just little things like she has different weapons, different upgrade options,
Yeah.
different skill sets was really enjoyable because
Her beautiful crossbow, my
oh
god.
man,
That's so much better than the bow.
yeah, and the fact that I think up until that point the game is brilliant in terms of gameplay
And story as
and
well.
story, obviously. And if they'd have kept that right to continue, you know, having the same weapons and the same skills and all that sort of stuff would have been perfectly okay, but you know, would have started to get a bit repetitive.
Yeah.
Because obviously the first game would have finished around that point. So it's a really nice addition that you get a totally new set of stuff to learn. In terms of her story, yeah, it's difficult. I, being totally honest, didn't connect with her character until they introduced two new characters called Lev and Yara that we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, because I struggled with Owen and Mel as well, who were the characters who were supposed to make you kind of empathise with Abby. Yeah, it took a while. I did get there.
Yeah,
but,
so did I.
It might be deliberate. It might be deliberate on Naughty Dog's part that you're supposed to feel kind of slightly jarred playing as her.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think part of me saw it coming because I was like, it's a bit weird that you play as her for like 5 minutes at the start of the game.
Yeah.
There's such a heavy focus on her. And when Abby showed up at the theatre, I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to play as Abby now. Because the game hasn't been long enough for this to be the end. And I don't know how this can possibly wrap up without there being some massive thing that has to influence the story. So yeah, I kind of figured it out a little bit before that scene. But yeah, by then I was like, okay, it has to be. But yeah, I was the same with Abby. It was a shame that, yeah, you'd spent the entire game hating this woman and had no reason to sympathise with her whatsoever. And then you switch to her, it shows you Joel's death again from her perspective, which does not help. Because you're like, yes, I know the bitch killed Joel. I've spent the entire game trying to get her. Then, yeah, you start playing as Abby, and then a lot of the rest of the game is as her, and there is definitely that initial dip when you start playing as her. I wonder if when I play it again, that dip won't be there.
I was thinking
because
that.
I'll already be invested in her character. I won't need to get reinvested.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I kind of wonder, like, maybe they thought about this during development, but if you have that opening up to the point where Joel dies, and then you see Ellie's... and then it gives you the option... Imagine if it gave you the option to play as Abby or Ellie, and then you can play the rest of the game whichever order you want. It kind of would and wouldn't work, but I wonder if that was ever something they considered. A bit like the old Resident Evils, where you could pick a character.
Possibly. I mean, you could even do it that after Joel's death, it switches to Abby at that point.
Yeah. And then you play Abby first and then switch to Ellie.
Yeah, because when...
It kind of work either way.
Yeah, because when you switch back to Ellie, obviously by that point, it's difficult. I think it's just one of those games where it takes a while to kind of absorb and digest, and it kind of matures.
Yeah.
Like a fine wine. But it's, like I was saying before, where my opinion's kind of grown and changed, there's a lot of food for thought there. And when you're playing it, there's so much happening, so much going on, and so many emotions and feelings.
Yeah. I've never played a game or watched a film that made me go through as many... I mean, it's one kind of area of emotions, like anger and revenge and sort of somewhat sympathy is in there as well. But yeah, I've never watched or played anything that made me like that. Be like, fucking hell, this is an emotional game.
I think it's part of it is people are just not used to it. I mean, there are some games that have done it, but
I would never say there's anything to that scale.
No,
personally.
no.
Or at least that I've not played.
Definitely. But if it was a TV show, if you take something like Breaking Bad, everyone got to season 3 and season 2 actually, and absolutely hated Walt.
Yeah.
But I don't know about everyone else.
I still loved him.
I still couldn't help but sympathise.
I loved him until the last episode.
Yeah, especially the very last episode. Yeah. And it's that sort of thing. I think if it was a TV show, people wouldn't have been so harsh about it.
Yeah.
I think the fact that you're given this idea of control, most games would give you a choice and there would be a bit more kind of control. This game, you're literally just swept up in the current.
Yeah.
They've got a story and you're just experiencing it. And the only decisions you can really make are gameplay decisions.
Yeah.
Which makes it unique, I think.
And the thing is, a lot of people complaining online about the ending and the fact that she kills Joel and everything. To those people, I say, like, this isn't your story. If you wanted that story, why don't you go write it yourself? Like, this is something Naughty Dog wrote. This is something they wanted to do. And this is decisions they made. And I think it's fucking... Like, the ending especially, I absolutely love. You weren't too sure on it at first, but...
It wasn't at first, but now I love it. Yeah.
I loved it as I was playing it, because the emotions it makes you feel while you're playing it, you're like, fucking hell, this is too much. But, yeah. But back to Abby, the first thing I'll point out, like... She is a fucking tank, and you don't notice it until you play as her. Like, she was always a bit, it's like, oh, Abby's a bit big, she's a bit strong looking. And then when you actually start playing her, and she's in a tank top, and it's like, is that her arms? Like, Jesus.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, that must be two, is that two rifles on the side of her?
Well, she kind of strangles the enemies as well, doesn't she? Because I think...
That's what Joel did, isn't it?
Yeah, but like right in the...
right in the cuff of the arm.
Exactly, so it's...
She's like a even beefier version of Joel.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, I just love the way literally you play as her and 5 seconds later you step out of a room and there's like a massive, pristine gym in front of you and I'm like, so that's how she got big.
Well, what else are you going to do in a kind of dystopian
That's
world?
true.
I mean, you would, wouldn't you?
Very true. But yeah, once you start playing as Abby, you kind of meet all of the characters that Ellie's been killing this entire time. Meet the Vita girl, who I don't think you ever find out her name, so this is called a Vita girl.
No, she does have a name.
Does she?
But again, she drifts in and out, even more so than, say, kind of Owen and Mel.
Yeah. She's just a background character, maybe.
Yeah, and she's just there to, I think, to kind of give you a slight indication of where the timeline is.
Yes.
Yeah, because obviously Abby...
It's very obvious when you kill that character because of the Vita.
Yeah.
So it's then, by having her always playing, literally every scene you see her, she's holding the Vita. It's almost like Sony's like, do you remember this?
Yeah.
We gave up on it like 5 years ago, but Naughty Dog like it. Naughty Dog?
Or they're taking the piss out of it.
Or they're taking the piss out of it.
Yeah. But either way...
Yeah. Was the Vita even out in 2013? Oh no, it was. Yeah, it came out in like 2011, I think. It came out the same year as the 3DS.
Wow, it's that old, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, what was I going to say? Yeah, so you meet all these characters, and it kind of feels like the start of the game again, which is fine, because it gets through it quite quickly, but it's still a little slow, and you feel like you're just wandering around for a bit.
Yeah, I think if I had one criticism, it would be to slightly condense Abby's storyline. I think it was a really interesting move, and ultimately I did invest with her character, so it was useful, and it's interesting to see the other perspective and learn more about the different factions and stuff. I just think it could have been maybe dropped down to 20-25 hours.
Yeah,
and it would have still
the
worked.
extra 5 hours, not the final 5 hours of the game, but the extra total 5 hours for the game in general.
Yeah.
It could have been 25 hours. It didn't need to be 30 odd.
No. I think if you kind of cut down some of the superfluous bits, like personally, I think some of the bits with Owen and Mel.
Yeah, you didn't really need her history that much. Like when they're on the Ferris wheel and stuff, I was like, eh.
No, exactly. You already had a history with the first flashback you see her in.
But that's kind of my problem with Abby's first half of her part of the story, is the entire bit. It's like it's force feeding you. Feel sorry for Abby. Joel killed her father, even though he did it in self-defense, and he was trying to kill his daughter, so he didn't. Well, his surrogate daughter.
Yeah.
He didn't really have a choice, and I think I think I remember telling you about this. I looked up someone playing the ending of Last of Us 1 because I wanted to just sort of see if her father was the surgeon at the end of the game. He's got a mask on, so it's you can't really tell.
Yeah.
But the guy in this video must have like known what happens in Last of Us 2, and because he must have played it recently. And he did what he could to not kill this guy. So he kept walking up to him, and the guy just holds out a scalpel and just turns his arm slowly whichever direction we go. And he was like, okay. So he pointed at the very, very, very tip of his toe, shot him, and the guy just goes, bleh, and dies. And they're like, oh my god, you killed him. It's like, you shot him in the toe.
Wait, that's not realistic? I thought everyone's pressure point was their toe.
You know what Joel should have said after he shot him in the toe? You're a doctor. Deal with it.
You're a doctor. Deal with it. Yeah, motherfucker.
Oh. Better toe the line from now on, buddy. Yeah.
No more tiptoeing for him.
Oh.
Anyway, so yeah, I felt the problem with Abby's story was at the beginning is, okay, I understand they needed to give some kind of motivation as to why she killed Joel, and there had to be motivation for the player, but you didn't need to throw it down stuff it down my throat that much. Like, it was every single character you meet. It was like, oh, Ellie killed this person, or Ellie killed you. You don't like Ellie now because she killed all these people. And I still stand by the idea that, yes, Joel killed her father, but Abby knew why Joel did it. He did it. She would have known that he was doing it to save Ellie. And, yeah, okay, she didn't see what happened in the room, but yes, Joel only... technically, in the original, Joel was only defending himself. But the constant cutscenes of like, oh, he killed him and everything, and then that's Abby's entire motivation. I still don't agree with her motivation for killing him, but yeah, I can see why they eventually went for that. But the idea that it tries to make you go, Joel is as bad as her, it's like, I don't quite agree with that, because yeah, she did it purely out of revenge. She wasn't trying to save anybody, she wasn't trying to do anything noble as such. She was just like, I hate Joel because he killed my father trying to save his daughter, so she goes and brutally murders him.
Yeah.
And that, for me, wasn't enough reason why Abby should be like this. Yes, of course she's going to be angry because Joel killed her father, but almost feels like, Ellie somewhat forgives Abby in the end, but it feels more like Abby should have been the one to forgive Joel. She should have shown some remorse for killing him, but I feel like she never does.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it's quite an unusual journey because Joel is, I think the problem a lot of people had was that they thought, well, Joel, his first game is a kind of redemption story.
Yeah.
And he's cold at the start. He's kind of, just living by the day, just not taking any chances and not opening himself up. And then the end of the game, that's changed.
Yeah. And he's quite a different character in the second one.
Yes. He's quite sensitive in a lot of the early scenes. And then I think a lot of people were annoyed because then they took that character and said, no, he's not a good guy.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's that at all. I think if anything, the two characters that come out not looking so great are Ellie and Abby.
Yeah.
Like, not just Abby, Ellie as well. And you can see they both have that struggle.
Yeah.
Because there's points where they're both going, maybe I've taken this too far. And that's a really interesting kind of character arc.
Yeah. It's good that they make imperfect characters, which is great because humans aren't perfect. And that's kind of the point of the story.
And there's no villains, which is really odd for a game.
Kind of both are the villain to each character is the villain to each other.
Yeah.
I
mean, I did think Abby was the villain on face value after that scene with Joel. But then when you learn the context, even though it is a bit kind of shoved down your throat.
Questionable and shoved down your throat.
But even with that, there is no point where I think, there is a villainous character. It's humans aren't like that anyway in real life. There is no heroes or villains. Human beings are too complicated for that.
Yeah.
People make good decisions, make bad decisions, make honourable decisions, make questionable decisions. And I think that's one thing that the game does really well.
Yeah. Hello, cat.
He's trying to join the podcast.
Come here, you, because you'll rat on the mic otherwise. Stay here. But yeah, so moving on to Abby's story, you meet Joel, not Joel. What's his name again? Owen and Mel
again.
And yeah, you meet Owen and Mel, and you're like, Mel's heavily pregnant. I'm like, okay, cool. That's kind of meant a match to Dina's character.
Yes.
And this is the woman that Ellie's killed. So you're like, okay, you can see why that Abby might be a bit angry. But the thing I really didn't like about this section is the fact that Mel, who is, at least 6 or 7 months pregnant, would you say?
She's
I'm not
a
fully
lot
sure how
further
pregnancy
along
works.
than Dina.
She's got a big bump.
Yeah.
And yet she still goes out into an active combat zone. And I'm sorry, but no fucking woman or mother in their right mind would ever do that. And she had no reason to do it either. Oh, Blink is back.
I will remove the cat from this equation.
Goodbye, cat. Oh, he's going. Yeah, it's close the door because probably scratch, but we'll just push him down if he comes back in. That should do it. Anyway, yeah. So Mel's character, I really didn't like. If she had been a sensible parent, I mean, the thing is, she would still be in the same place as Owen at that point in the story, even if she didn't go out in the combat zone. So I don't know why they felt they needed to shove her into that bit. I say that is probably the biggest bad decision they made. So the cat's attacking the table like now. Oh,
because we're not paying him enough attention, you know.
Well, he can join the podcast. It's fine. Okay, maybe we will have to put him out.
Yeah, I get it.
Oh,
there we go.
Oh, is he gonna go? But yeah, that was the thing that kind of annoyed me about that area of the story, and that because that was so near the beginning, that made me even more disconnected from the story. I was actually like, I can't bother to play this today.
Yeah,
you know, because it's just like that makes no sense, and I don't see any situation where any pregnant mother would go out when she's that pregnant and had no reason to.
Yeah, unless you had.
Yeah, if it was like they were desperate for food and they were the only three of the group, fine. But she's not. She's part of a massive colony of people.
Yeah, they live in that football stadium. They're secure to some extent, and the fact that Dina, who's a lot less further along,
she doesn't even necessarily know she's fully pregnant. She's just like, she's pretty sure she's pregnant.
So she's playing it safe.
Yeah. But yeah, Mel's character I had no sympathy for, because I was just like, yeah, okay, yes, when she gets killed, where she would have been there anyway, because she's trying to leave with Owen. I keep getting the name wrong. But yeah, I was kind of like, that was just really bad writing, I thought, that she goes out. But thankfully she does stay in the aquarium, and it kind of just gets left behind after that.
Yeah, it's quite a short sequence, isn't it, to be fair?
Yeah.
So.
But that was the first thing that kind of made me go, oh, for God's sake, is this what the rest of the game is going to be like? Just poor decisions. But thankfully it wasn't. Anyway, so after that bit annoyed me, there's a heavy focus on the dogs in Abby's story as well, because obviously you've got to remember that Ellie kills her dog.
Yeah.
And then rest of Abby's story, let's think what really happens. So up before the point up to the scars, where she meets the two kids.
Yeah.
What really happens?
Well, she's kind of doing the stuff that she's supposed to for the Wolf, the Washington Liberation Front, because there's the character of Isaac.
Oh yeah.
Who's like the leader. So she's doing kind of scouting patrols with the character Manny, and then
I need you to hear me out.
She kind of finds out that Owen is kind of holed up in the aquarium, and he's thinking about leaving and stuff like this. So she wants to go and kind of bring him round and stuff like that. So it's quite a lot of kind of combat encounters.
Yeah.
Both with infected, and that's one good thing actually. In particular, is there's quite a good mixture between kind of encountering the infected and encountering
Yeah,
the
she's
other
almost got
scars.
more of a balance than Ellie, because Ellie's on the rampage for killing people. So,
Yeah. And you do have a bit of fighting with the scars as Ellie just before the switch,
Yeah.
but there's more of it with Abby, which makes sense because obviously that's the opposing faction.
And you kind of see a bit of their story as well.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was you said about this or heard it in a podcast, but you were meant to go to the island with Ellie as well.
Let's go to the island.
So the island of the scars, you meant to go there as Ellie originally as well, but
Oh,
they
right.
cut it out because they felt it didn't fit.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Abby's story up to the scars point is mostly about her relationship with Owen,
Yes.
and as we've both discussed, I didn't give any fucks. I just
No.
didn't care about their relationship at all.
No, it just didn't really work. Which is a shame because as soon as she meets basically Lev and Yara have been kind of exiled from the scars, where they've been hunted by the scars. So once you meet them, it gets a lot better in terms of investment. I really like the characters of Lev and Yara. Lev in particular, I thought was a really good character, and I like the idea that kind of by the last section of the game, all the main characters are kind of stepping away from the factions. Because even Ellie's part of Jackson originally.
Yeah. She's kind of gone off on her own.
But she goes off on her own. Abby then starts to stop doing what the Wolves want and doing her own thing. And then obviously Lev and Yara are escaping from the scars.
Yeah.
So everyone's stuck in this weird kind of in-between space where they're kind of coming to the realisation that the agendas of the factions, they're not inherently evil, but it's just... like anything, it's just a pointless war.
Yeah.
Between the scars and the wolves, it's an ongoing feud that's never gonna come to a conclusion. So
but I mean, when they're going through Owen's relationship, I didn't really care. I could barely remember what happens with it, because you have a few flashbacks where it shows that she was dating Owen. Okay, I know Owen dies and he's then dating Mel, so I know that relationship's kind of pointless and even showing me. Then we get on to the good stuff of where she meets, I can't remember the names now, Yuri,
Lev and Yara.
You have that scene that they showed in one of the very first trailers, where it's in the forest, she's getting hung, and then she gets saved by Lev and... Why do I keep forgetting the names?
Lev, yeah.
But yeah, the bit where Yuri... Yara. Why do you keep
She's the older sister and Lev's the,
younger brother.
brother.
Yeah. But she gets her arm, crushed in with a hammer, which I was like, fucking hell, it's pretty, it's pretty graphic as well, the way they did that. But yeah, Lev comes in and saves them both, lets Abby down, and then you run through that forest bit, which was quite cool. And that's pretty much where Abby's story started to kick in for me.
Yeah.
That's where everything started getting interesting. Her relationship with those two. I was still surprised, when you get them to the camper vans and then, the caravans in fact, and then leave them, and then she comes back the next day. I didn't actually expect her to come back. I thought that was kind of going to be the point of, you save those two, now Abby's got to carry on.
Yeah.
But before she comes back, you have that really awkward sex scene, which was that was so bad. I understood why it was in there. It had to create some kind of friction between her and Mel.
Good choice of words, though, yeah.
I was trying to think of a non-sexual one, and there isn't any. Between her, Mel, and Owen. But again, I still didn't care about that relationship. I knew those two were... It wasn't like I knew those two died, so I had no interest in them. I knew they weren't going to escape. I knew that Abby wasn't going to go with them. So it's just like, did you really need to put that in? She could have just stayed the night, had a dream about Lev and Yara, and gone back.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving on from the awkward sex scene, which it's not only was it awkward, it's just like, this is kind of dumb. It just didn't need it at all.
No, it didn't need it, because I think you already got the idea from dialogue and kind of, because the facial expressions are really good as well, that there was still feelings between those two. And Mel knew anyway. Yeah. She could sense that. So it was a little unnecessary.
But yeah, so we'll move on to Beyond once you meet the scars, because I think everything before that is nothing really to talk about.
No, I mean, there's a few
Few minor
flashbacks.
points,
It's kind of...
Oh yeah, there's some more stuff about her father, which again felt very forced. But
Yeah, it was good. It was good stuff.
Mm.
I enjoyed it, but yeah, I think it is a bit spoon-fed.
yeah, I did like the nightmares that Abby has, where it's back in the hospital, but it's like changes each time. I thought
Yeah, that was
cool.
really good. The interesting thing as well about saying not really being bothered about Owen and Mel's death, what I thought, a lot of people criticised this, but I actually thought it was a really clever technique, was how out of the blue people's deaths were.
Yeah, they just happened. Like
and
Jesse's especially, it was just like, oh, Jesse's dead.
Manny, even though Manny I wasn't that interested in, it was still well done. And people saying, well, there wasn't enough time to kind of dwell on it. And I think
that's kind of the point.
That's kind
you
of the
wouldn't
point.
have time in that environment. You know?
It's literally a non-stop ride.
Yeah.
And just things are happening and it's all chaotic. And I think the characters do get impacted by it, but later on. I mean, you see the after effects of it come later on. And obviously Joel's one is going to take its time and linger because that's such an important one. But the snapshot kind of suddenness of these characters dying, I think is one, realistic.
Yeah.
And two, I actually thought it was quite like, whoa. That I think that's more impactful.
They're always brutal deaths as well. Like when Manny gets shot in the face, you pretty much get the blood like burst towards you. So
and that whole idea of no one is safe.
Yeah.
And it gives Naughty Dog the kind of wiggle room to be like, well, no one's safe.
Yeah, that's kind of the point.
You know, we could
kill anybody.
We could kill
Ellie,
anyone.
Abby.
Yeah. No one's free from the chopping block, essentially. Which is, again, kind of a filmic thing. I mean, if you look at like people like the Coen brothers, well, actually, even going back to Hitchcock with Psycho, where he decided to kill a main character like halfway through a film, which was unheard of at the time. And then Coen brothers are kind of well known for it as well. But I still think it's a really effective technique because, you know, there's realism there, there's surprise, you know, it's
pretty cool. And like, so with Lev and Yara, with her arm getting crushed in, it becomes infected and she has to have it cut off. And I quite liked the story of like, you've got to work your way to that hospital, you've got to go to that massive tower.
That hospital is horrendous.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, that's with the so you
the
go
thing.
It was literally the thing. But yeah, you go through the hospital. There's a really cool scene where you fight like sadly the only infected boss battle you have.
Yeah.
Which I think would have been, you could have had more.
I think it's called the Rat King, is what it's actually
The Rat King,
called.
yeah. Which I wonder why. It doesn't really make sense to me. But anyway, it's according to like the model viewer, I think it's a bloater mixed with a what the fans Stalker,
which are also new, aren't they?
Yeah, and it kind of like tears apart one of them halfway through the fight. But that's the one that caught me and twisted my head off and pulled it off. I was like, fucking hell.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really cool. The hospital scene was really quite freaky because it is pitch black. All the doors are locked, but you have to turn on the power, which you know will open all the doors, and that's when all the infected start chasing you. But yeah, that was a really cool scene, and with the giant monster thing, like I was like, okay, have I got to find something in the room to kill it? It's like, no, you just got to keep shooting it. And I'm like, fuck.
Don't stop moving.
Don't stop moving. Yeah, if you stop, you're pretty dead. And the way it just like goes, you'll be like in a room, you'll be like and then it just bursts through the room like the fucking Kool-Aid man. And you're like, fucking hell, what are you doing to me?
Yeah, I mean, it's testament to how good the game is, despite the small flaws, that I still played it, because I am a pussy when it comes to horror.
Yeah,
and the first game had some moments, but it's okay. But the second game really does have and I struggled with some of it, but I pushed through, and I'm glad I did.
The bit where so you know something's in the hospital, you think it's gonna be like a bloater or something. But when you come into the garage and there's an ambulance and you go in and get the kit, and I was like, oh, she's got the kit. And I was like, something's going to happen any minute. And then that thing rips the door open or like bursts through. And I was just like, what the fuck is that? Oh, I reacted exactly how she did this. Yeah.
I heard you, because I did the exact same thing.
Yeah, because for the podcast, we live in the same house, so yeah, I was literally playing it downstairs. That happened. I was just like, what the fuck is that? Gee, and I fucking run. But yeah, that was very unexpected. But I'm guessing that's what happens to an infected that's been completely isolated with other infected for like 35 years, because it would have been, they said that was like ground zero for their infected. Yeah. So they would have been there since day one and locked down there.
Yeah,
so,
and the spores situation's like a lot worse in that building and stuff. So,
but I thought that was a really good boss fight, and that was like a really interesting scene. Working towards the hospital, you see Abby's fear of heights and fall and everything. That was really good. And then you work your way back. So Abby takes Lev and Yara to Owen and Mel, because Mel is a doctor.
Yeah.
And even though they know their scars, they basically agreed to help them because she saved Abby. And then she goes through the procedure, has her arm cut off, and then you... basically, we have the crap with Mello, and I didn't give a shit about that part of the story. But yeah, Lev decides to run back to his island of the scars to save his mother. Which is where you then have to go off and try and help him with Abby and Yara, isn't it?
Yeah, Yara comes with you for that.
So she's missing an arm, so she can't do a huge amount. But that's when the story, I think, really picked up again, when you go to that island and you see the scars side of things. In fact, just before you go there, is when you bump into Tommy and... what's her friend's name called? That gets shot in the face by Tommy. I've forgotten his name.
Oh, Manny,
yeah. That sequence was cool when you're trying to like track down Tommy. You don't know it's Tommy until literally the last second where he fights you just outside the bar.
Yeah, it's the pace is a lot tighter. Yeah. Which kind of where it was with Ellie, it's kind of got back into that, you know.
Basically, I think so the whole game is start as Ellie and goes up and up and up and up and up, and then you become Abby, and then it goes whoosh and goes straight down in terms of pace. And then it slowly picks back up, and the scars is where it starts really going up. And then from the rest of the game, it's just straight. It's just getting better and better.
Yeah.
But yeah, after you've fought off Tommy, push him into the water, then use a boat to get over to the island, and you start working your way through the island. There's not really much story until you get to the point with Lev and his mother. And his mother tried to kill him because she agrees with the scars still and thinks that he's like betrayed everybody because he shaved his head. All he did, the whole reason that he's being hunted is because he shaved his head.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And yeah, he ends up killing his mother, basically.
Yeah, well, the scars are fanatical.
Yeah.
They're also called the Seraphites, I think.
I think the Seraphites are their real name.
They call that's what, and then the wolf clan called them.
Guessing, like, because they've all got scars on their face, so I'm guessing that's something they actually put on themselves. But
they're scary. I think they're scarier than the Washington Liberation Front.
Yeah,
because they've fanatical.
It's the gutting.
The gutting. Yeah, that's really disturbing. And yeah, there's just something quite eerie, even about the way they whistle. It's just a feature so that they can tell them where you are and who's down, and it's kind of like a tactical feature, but it's still quite unnerving.
Although it still always reminds me of Yondu. I keep expecting a little arrow to go like... And they fire a lot of arrows.
Yeah, to be fair.
But yeah, I thought that section of the story again was really interesting. Then you have to escape the island with the two of them. But before you do, the wolves start invading the island and start burning everything down. But as you're escaping, you bump into Oscar and a bunch of the wolves, and they annoyingly shoot Yara dead. Well, shoot her first.
Yeah.
And you're like, great. So you went through all of that hospital stuff for absolutely no reason, because she dies less than half a day later.
Yeah.
Then Oscar's about to kill Abby and Lev before it turns out Yara's still alive, shoots him in the head, and then she just gets brutally gunned down loads, which was like, fucking hell.
Yeah.
That was That was extra brutal. And then you basically are now fighting the wolves and the scars as Abby, which is really interesting, I thought, as well.
Yeah, it's a really good sequence. It's intense. It's action packed.
I'm pretty sure it's in buildings.
I could imagine them living in.
Yeah, there was a lot of tents
because there were cabins, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But there was. This is one specific thing that happened to me, and you saw this as well. But a bit where one of the massive people with an axe pushed me, and I flew over a table and landed in the water.
Yes.
Remember that being a really cool scene?
Yeah, and then you swam away.
Yeah, and I was like, fucking hell, I just left Lev to it because he's invincible. By the way, I found the AI never improved for the human side. It had its moments where it did a good job.
Yeah.
But most of the game, I'd say it barely improved over the first one.
I feel like Yev was probably one of...
yes,
Joel
was
the most useful.
Yes, Joel was a fucking beast when he was alongside
in that
Ellie.
flashback.
I forgot about that. That flashback was good. The Joel and Ellie flashbacks.
Yeah, all of the ones, all of the Joel Ellie ones were really good.
I forgot to mention Ellie's story part where Joel reveals what he did.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll finish Abby's bit and then we'll go back to that. But yeah, Abby, so you go through with the scars, Yara's dead, you escape the island, you have a boss fight with a massive guy who literally gut his mouth open, he's still fucking coming for you. That was really cool. She loses all of her guns. Then she goes back to the island, goes back to the aquarium, and that's where we meet up to the point where Ellie has killed Owen and Mel.
It all comes full circle, yeah.
They find the map that Ellie's left behind, so she figures out where they are, and then we go back, and that's when the two stories connect.
Yeah.
And you have that fucking brutal fight scene.
Yes.
Where you're playing as Abby, but fighting Ellie.
Yeah.
So she shoots Jesse in the face. She also shoots Tommy in the head, which I thought Tommy's dead. We'll come to that in a minute. And then, you fight Ellie, but it was the most difficult fight. Every time I had to punch her, I was like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And I died quite a few times. Did you ever get hit by the shotgun?
I did, because the first time I wanted to see if I could just...
die, and that'd be the end of the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which I think would have been quite cool. Maybe but at the same time, it would have been a lot of people would have fell for that being the end of the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, the death animations for that bit were great. Shotgun in the stomach, she falls on the floor and it's and then gets shotgun directly in the face.
Yeah.
And that's where I started seeing, damn, Ellie is fucking scary when you're fighting her.
Yeah, definitely.
Even with Abby's fucking awesome muscles.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have that amazing fight scene and the bit where she gets on top of that Ellie and just breaks her arm. You're like, holy shit, she's actually going to kill her. Because, all the leaks that happened before the game came out, I'd heard rumours that Ellie dies.
Oh, right.
But, obviously it's a spoiler cast, but yeah, she doesn't, obviously.
Yeah.
When she breaks her arm and then goes over to... Dina comes in and tries to help her, but Lev shoots her with an arrow, so she's down, and then Abby just picks up her head and starts slamming it into the ground.
Yeah.
That was fucking crazy. And then, picks her up and is about to cut her throat. Ellie says she's pregnant, and that's when because that entire scene I was kind of jumping between hating Abby and hating Ellie a bit, because fucking hell, this is too much. And then when she goes good and is about to cut her throat, I was like, fucking hell, that's going to be... Ellie will never stop hunting her if she does that. But then Lev comes in, and considering the scars are always shown as quite evil, it's interesting that Lev is the moral compass in that scene.
Yes, definitely.
And just goes, don't. And that's when Abby goes, just lets Dina survive and lets Ellie live.
Yeah.
And goes, don't let me see you again. And then that's it. I was thinking that was pretty much going to be the end of the game.
Yeah.
But we'll go on to the next bit of it. We'll quickly discuss the Joel scene with Ellie.
Yeah.
Because the entire game, I was thinking, because there was kind of a tension between her and Joel the entire way through. I was like, I reckon he's told her.
Yeah.
But we're going to get told about it when he did it later. And of course, she gets back to the hospital, which I found a bit unrealistic, because how the fuck did she get from Jackson, was it, all the way back there by horse?
Yeah.
I mean, in the end of the first game, you drive back.
Yeah.
So I was a bit like, how the fuck did she get there? That was the only thing that kind of threw me off, was that she got all the way back to the hospital without really knowing how she got there and how she would have gotten back, because obviously Joel drives off. And Joel also knowing where she's gone, because she obviously wouldn't have told him where she was going. So that was a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, I think it is.
Yeah,
where,
unless she
came out of
pieced it
nowhere.
together, because kind of by that point she's
Yeah.
done some scouting trips and she's a bit older, but
But I do wonder how Joel would have known that she went there
Hmm.
as well. That's kind of confused me a bit. But aside from that, that actual scene where he tells her, I think was really, really good. And I think some of, like, Troy Baker's best acting when he's, like, telling her.
both of them just incredible. And I think even more so when you combine it with the quality of the motion capture and facial expressions. Like, whoever's sat there and meticulously done those
Yeah.
facial expressions just deserves a prize. Because,
Yeah, the animations in that game were ridiculous.
Oh man, I mean, the bit that always got me with the Joel scene isn't anything anyone says, it's just them locking eyes.
Yeah.
And you can see it in their eyes. And that's insane for a video
Yeah.
game. Like, obviously in a
amazing you can see
film,
that.
because it's a real person, but for a video game, it's just like,
crazy.
whoa. But yeah, it is, I think it's a scene, like you say, you can see us coming, but that doesn't take away any of the impact.
Yeah.
If anything, you're kind of dreading it, and it builds up, so that eventual payoff is like even more affecting.
Which, it was amazing that was a thing that you kind of felt would have to happen in this game, but it's probably one of the least, so how can I put it? All the twists in the game, I would say that's the one I kind of think about the least, which is crazy because it was the entire premise of the first game, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really well done. That scene really well acted, and it finally explained why Ellie's got a bit of a funny relationship with Joel at that time.
Yeah, because they did it in an interesting way, didn't they? Because they had another flashback with Tommy and Joel.
Yeah.
And you can tell things are a bit strained there. There's another cutscene where she's even younger, where they're on a bit more friendly terms.
Yeah.
So you can kind of start to see where the puzzle pieces are coming together. It's a very fragmented game, but in a very satisfying way.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of... your brain starts to put the strands together as it's... But there's still enough of the corner pieces missing for you to not be clued up on everything.
What's happening. But yeah, I suppose we'll be jumping into the final act now. So, yeah, after Abby leaves Ellie and Dina alive, we cut to what seems maybe a year or two later. It's got to be at least... I mean, that baby's got to be at least, 8 months-ish?
Yeah.
So I would say probably a year and a half at the very minimum, because Ellie is now living on a farm with Dina, and the baby has been born, and the baby was Jesse. Jesse was the father. I found out his name is Jesse Joel as well, so that's why it's JJ.
Yeah. And that's where the game ends. Nothing else happens.
Yeah, nothing else
they
happens.
all live happily ever
after, and that would have been a perfectly fine ending, but
No.
no. There's still like another 4 hours to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically back on this farm, and Ellie goes and puts the sheep away, which we have to herd in. And basically turns out she's got PTSD of Joel's death and everything that happened.
Which is fantastic.
Which is really well put together, yeah. Especially when like the storm starts kicking in, you go outside and she just starts freaking out and screaming.
Yeah.
And then Dina comes out and takes JJ away and everything. But it's interesting because you can see that something's not right with Ellie as soon as you start playing her, because she's gone like super skinny, like unhealthily skinny at this point. And then, yeah, but basically you have freak out. Then Tommy shows up at the house, which I was really surprised about, and they kind of hide it because she's like, "Oh, whose horse is this?" And I was like, "Whose horse is this? Someone attacking the house, and something else is going to happen." And then it turns out Tommy's alive. He's got a big scar down the side of his face, so he didn't quite get killed, and his leg's fucked up where he got an arrow through it as well. And he's come there with a map showing where Abby's gone. He's found out where Abby is, and because he can't go because he can't really walk properly, he asks Ellie to do it. But of course, Ellie is kind of terrified of doing that because of her PTSD, and Dina doesn't want her to do it and basically tells Tommy to fuck off and not come back. But then during the night, Ellie wakes up and she just can't sleep, so she realises that she needs to go and kill Abby. She goes downstairs, gets her equipment. That's when Dina realises what she's doing, and that's when Dina's like, if you do this, I can't do this again, sort of thing. And it's horrible because you see that Ellie's got a really nice life at this point.
Yeah.
And she could just carry on. She could just let it go and let it be, but she can't. she leaves, and then we switch over to Abby again. And like probably the shortest part of a game that I've ever played that gives you new equipment, and then you never go back to that character.
And new enemies.
New enemies. Oh yes,
The rattlers.
But
Yeah.
they give you like this weird like old style shotgun. I was like, oh cool, and then you have it for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, and then technically you go back to playing as Ellie.
Yeah,
And you get a new weapon there as well.
that's true. But you do, and you can't upgrade that because it's already upgraded. But yeah, so as Abby, you are looking for the Fireflies again. She breaks into a house that she's basically found information on that used to be a base. But as you're leaving, she gets kidnapped by what are they fucking called?
The rattlers.
The Rattlers, yeah. Basically, biker gang in The Last of Us.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yeah, with Dog the Bounty Hunter. It looks like him, doesn't
Basically, Dog the Bounty Hunter. And we then, she gets kidnapped. It's quite brutal. She's like she gets really badly beaten up. And then we cut back to Ellie, and she's gone to the same location as where Abby was. We start working our way through trying to find her. There's a bit where Ellie gets caught by like a rope trap, gets pulled up into a tree, gets stabbed in the side, which kind of comes into play later. And then she manages to basically cut her down when the Rattlers find her as well. But because she's immune, she just runs towards the clicker and gets a guy bit, which was really cool.
Yeah.
She gets bit on the hand, and everyone's like, "Oh, you haven't got long either." She's just like, "Fuck you."
Yeah, she uses it to get the information
Yeah.
out of that guy because he thinks, well, she'll be desperate.
Yeah,
to
she'll be dead before
trade
she
up.
gets there anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, she kills Dog the Bounty Hunter. What shame.
Yeah.
And then she works her way to finding out the Rattlers' camp, and finding there isn't really much other story in this other than building up to that.
No, it's just a nice section of gameplay
Yeah.
where you're kind of working
Some
your way
really
through
nice
this.
fights.
Yeah.
And they've got helmets and stuff to protect them from one-shot
Oh,
kills, which
God.
was fucking brutal.
Yeah.
I couldn't really stealth that bit at all.
No, it's really difficult. The only way you can slightly stealth it is with trap mines.
Yeah,
But there's so many of them that
Yeah.
only gets
that
things
bit was
that hurt a
fucking
bit.
difficult.
Yeah.
But I liked the way Ellie still had her old guns, unlike Abby, who lost them in the fire. So
Yeah.
that was a nice little touch.
Yeah.
And you get a nice MP5 with silence and
You
everything.
do, yeah, that's sweet.
Which is exactly the same as what happens in the first. You get a machine gun right at the end.
Oh, yeah.
I thought, as soon as I picked it up, I was like, definitely the end
But
now.
that's not silence, because
No.
I remember I just
That was just an
fucking
M16.
I Rambo'd the end of
Yeah.
that game. I
I
was
think
just
everyone does.
like, yeah.
But yeah, you work your way through the Rattlers' camp, find the prison. Ellie is pretty fucked up at this point because of the wound on her side. She stitched it up, but she's still kind of screwed over from it. And finds a prison cell and she frees everyone else that's been captured.
Mm-hmm.
They tell her where Abby went and said, she tried to escape, but she's probably dead by now. And this is where the game really kind of wrapped everything up nicely, I think.
Oh, yeah.
You come down to the beach and there's...
Although it didn't wrap up nicely. I think that's the point.
Yeah, that's kind of the point. But it connected everything.
Yeah,
nicely.
yeah, definitely.
And yeah, you come down to the beach and Abby is hanging up on a pillar. And it turns out it's been 2 months since Abby was kidnapped.
And Lev's
And
there
Lev.
as well, yeah.
And it was just, as soon as I saw her up there, I was like, oh, is she dead? And then no, she's not. She wakes up. Turns out she's like a complete wreck. She's lost all of her muscle. Hair's been cut off. She looks almost like a completely different person. And Ellie cuts her down, and she cuts down Lev. And then they start walking towards the beach. And I was like, fucking hell, is it just going to be that she's going to let them go? So there's 2 boats. They both get in separate boats.
That's what you think, isn't it? Yeah.
But then Ellie puts down her bag and has another flashback of Joel getting his head caved in. And then you just have that fight scene. And I thought that was fucking amazing, that scene. This is the thing that a lot of people didn't like.
Yeah.
Was the way this ended. And I think it's one of the best endings I've ever played. Because it averted all expectations. I kind of saw coming that Ellie might forgive her or some way. But not in the way it happened. I didn't think it would be in a brutal knife fight, punch in and trying to drown each other, and just two women are like so desperate to kill each. Well, it's more Ellie desperately trying to kill her, and Abby's desperately trying to defend herself so she can save Lev.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And it was the scene as well where I thought Ellie is no better than Abby because she threatens Lev, who's completely uninvolved with everything, and she threatens to kill him. in order to convince Abby to fight, because Abby won't fight her otherwise.
It's that idea that I think it happens to Abby earlier on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because she threatens to kill Dina as well. When Ellie goes, she has nothing to do with this.
Yeah, it's that idea that these characters are just consumed by hate, and they're not bad people, but
they almost become the same person by this point.
they do.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of weird because
You just don't see that coming.
especially with the whole reflection water thing, it's quite
Yeah.
kind of profound in that way, I
But
guess.
yeah, that fight at the end is really brutal, and the bit where Ellie keeps kind of chopping and changing between who's going to fight, and even there was a bit where you're pushing a knife into Abby, and I was like, okay, am I allowed to stop because I don't want to kill Abby anymore? I've changed my mind, which I never thought I would ever change my mind.
Yeah.
So I kind of slowed down, but Abby grabs a knife and stabs you in the throat, and I was like, oh, okay, so it then resets and you have to carry on. But yeah, then when Ellie finally gets the upper hand and is on top of her and drowning her, the emotion on her face then, that was fucking crazy good detail. Because you're like, she's upset, she's angry, she's happy that she's finally killing Abby. She's showing like 5 different emotions at once. And it's a face that I don't think you could pull unless you're a really good actor.
Yeah.
And which, credit to Ashley Johnson in playing her.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And to, what's the woman who plays...
Laura Bailey.
Laura Bailey as well. She's been getting a lot of shit online lately because as an actor in a video game, she killed somebody's favourite character.
Oh, it's a load of bollocks.
No.
It happens. It's like when there's someone nasty from fucking EastEnders.
Oh,
and
yeah,
people
yeah.
start shouting abuse at them on the
Yeah,
street. It's so
there was
ridiculous.
I've never watched EastEnders. Well, I've seen bits of it because your parents will watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a bit where a woman kidnaps a baby and people like threatened her in real life. It's like, it's fucking TV show.
Yeah.
Why do people think this is a documentary? If EastEnders was a documentary, we have no hope for mankind. But yeah, the ending of the last 2 I thought was incredible. A lot of people didn't like it. You at first weren't sure, but you've come around to it.
I think at first I just was slightly numb from it.
Yeah.
I couldn't really. I told you I went to work and I was just so out of it. I was just, which is kind of what I felt with the first one. It just felt so
Drained.
I felt like I'd been punched in the face.
Yeah.
And then the day after, I was like, I did get punched in the face, but in a good way.
Emotionally.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh my god, yeah. And
incredible.
I think for me, like you, I was against Abby for so long and really wanted that vengeance to be enacted. I mean, my favourite Marvel character is the Punisher. I'm all about eye for an eye, just if they kill people you love, you fucking kill them.
Yeah.
And I think this is the first instance, or it's not very often, that I've actually changed my opinion on that. I changed my opinion all the time on other things, but I've always been quite kind of singular focused with that. Hence why I love the Punisher so much, because he literally does just, right, I'm going to get my revenge and kill everyone.
Yeah.
And this did change me, and I think it's because, despite some earlier faults with Abby, she does become
Turn into a
very
really good character.
Really good character, yeah.
But yeah, Ellie lets her go. She doesn't really forgive her, she just gives in, realises this isn't going to make her happy, and isn't going to bring Joel back. All it's going to do is leave Lev to die as well. So yeah, that's where they part ways, and you never see Abby again after that. No. That's it.
There's a little teaser after the credits with the home. With the home screen.
It looks like she's gone to the firefight.
Yeah.
But it does cut back to the farm with Ellie.
Yes.
And there's some interesting things I've read online of what people think's happened here. So, first off, how we perceived it, I imagine, is you come into the farm, there's no one there, all the stuff is gone except the stuff in Ellie's room. She picks up her guitar. Oh, by the way, Abby bites off Ellie's fingers, 2 of her fingers.
Yeah.
Ellie comes in, sits down with her guitar, tries playing the song that Joel taught her, realises she can't play it properly, and I think at that moment is where it cuts back to the night of the dance, doesn't it?
Yes.
We actually see that scene from E3 a few years ago, which we all thought wasn't in it. Joel protects Ellie, defends Ellie from some homophobic guy.
Yes, the bar owner.
Then Ellie comes to him later in the night and basically says, I don't think I can forgive you for what you did, but then says she would like to try, which was a really good scene, I thought. And I thought it was going to end with the two of them hugging. But I actually found out that Ashley Johnson, originally that was going to be in the game that they hug at the end. But Ashley Johnson felt that she wouldn't be there yet. Yeah. She felt as a character she wouldn't feel that close to him yet.
Makes sense. But, I mean, that bit broke me. I think the ending with her and Abby is really intense and powerful. But I think the bit that really got me in that game was her saying that and then Joel's reaction.
Yeah, Joel's again. Troy Baker can fucking act.
And I think that's what really impressed me about the game, and any of the minor faults I had just kind of dissolved away because that scene was just phenomenal. And it really was in the vein of Last of Us. Yeah, because there's a lot of changes since the first game. It is a different game, and even Neil Druckmann himself has said some people that like the first game won't like this game. Yeah, but I felt that was very in keeping.
That was very within the Last of Us theme.
I felt like that journey had come all the way from the first game.
But Ellie, once she realises she can't play the guitar, leaves it behind. Kind of a symbolic thing that she needs to leave behind her memories of Joel in a sense. But there's an interesting theory online that basically when you're playing as Ellie trying to kill Abby at the end, she hasn't got this bracelet on her arm that Dina gives her earlier in the game.
Oh, okay.
But when you go back to the farm, Ellie's fingers are cauterized, she's wearing different clothes, and she's got that bracelet back on.
Right.
Also, when she enters the farmhouse, she's not surprised that there's nothing there. She doesn't react emotionally to Dina being gone or anything like that. So people think that this is actually further ahead than you think. She's actually already gone back to Jackson.
She's retreading old ground.
Yeah, she's gone back to Jackson, met with Dina again and Tommy, and decided to go back and live there. She's come back to the farm to get her guitar, but when she realises that she can't play it anymore, that's where she just goes, I'm going to leave it behind, and that's when she walks off. I think that's an interesting idea for that ending.
It is interesting, but what's great about it is that there's no certainty.
Yeah, it's all made up into interpretation.
Ending.
Yeah,
and when those endings are done well.
Yeah.
Like if you take, for example, something like Inception.
Yeah, which is probably my favourite.
With the spinning top. It's where there's that little bit of...
There's that little bit of context that can change it for you. Yeah. A lot of people point out in Inception that he only wears his wedding ring.
Yes,
I think in real life, and at the end he's not wearing it, so essentially they're pointing out that it's a dream. But I think, only Christopher Nolan says he knows exactly what version it is.
Only the people that make it are going to know for certain.
But I hope on maybe Christopher Nolan on his deathbed will go, God was dreaming. But that was The Last of Us basically. Last of Us 2.
That was The Last of Us Part 2.
Part 2. Yeah. A good hour and 10 minutes. Proud of that one.
Well, it was a lot to cover. It's a dense game.
We had a good interval of cat interruption halfway through.
Oh, well, you got to mix these things up.
Exactly.
Like The Last of Us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
throw in the unexpected.
Exactly.
Have a cat.
Get a cat in there. And overall, for me, Last of Us 1 and 2, I kind of like the way Back to the Future films were with me, in that
They went back in time?
Yeah. Well, technically you did with Abby.
Oh shit! It's all connected.
In the sense that if I was ever to play the stories again, I would play the first one first and the second one second, obviously. I wouldn't just go back and play the second one again. Because it feels like one flowing story and you can't really have one without the other. Yeah. And like anyone who said that, I don't like the story of the second one, all these people giving it 0s or 2s, you're a fucking idiot and you clearly just hate it for the sake of hating it. Because even if you didn't like the story of that game, there's no way in hell you could give that game anything less than like a 7 in terms of like how the game plays, the graphics, the acting, all that stuff. You cannot fault that. Yeah. It is good. If you don't like the story, then fair enough. Yeah. I personally loved it. There's that dip in the middle, but kind of looking back on it, I don't think I would feel so annoyed about it if I played it again, apart from a few key things like Mel going into the war zone. And it does feel like you're starting the game all over again when you switch to Abby. But overall, I thought it was a fucking fantastic game. I would say it's probably PS4's... Between that and Spider-Man, probably PS4's best exclusive.
I would. I'd say it was. I just think it's so unique, and I think it took risks, and obviously some of those risks didn't pay off with some people that didn't like it.
Yeah, but for those people.
But I would say, if you've completed it recently and have just kind of gone, oh, I didn't like that, I would say give it time.
Yeah.
Because I think when you've had time to properly absorb it and digest it, you realise just how impressive it is and powerful.
I think what's interesting about it as well is at the start of the game when Abby kills Joel, you feel Ellie's emotions. Like, you feel the same as her. But by the end of it, I think I was so disconnected from Ellie's emotions. Not in a bad way, but like, I was completely against what Ellie was doing. I was like, Ellie, just leave it. This is not going to change anything. But the crazy thing is if Ellie didn't go and try and kill Abby, Abby would have died, along with Lev, because she would have stayed tied to that post and died there and then.
Which again shows some brilliant writing.
Yeah.
I mean, to come up with that.
It's butterfly effect through the whole thing.
Yeah. There's so much wrapped up in it. That I think
you could discuss it for hours.
You could. Like I'm saying, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still,
It's crazy to think that after all of Ellie's hatred, all of her determination to kill her, she actually ends up saving her life. Yeah. Which is pretty insane.
Yeah. And I don't think it's people have been saying, oh, it's a lesson on violence is bad and, this is what hate does. I don't think it's implicit. It's
just a story about hate and what it ultimately leads to.
Yeah, and the world that Last of Us exists in is always been brutal.
Yeah.
And it's always been that idea that people are forced to do the worst things imaginable. So I think it's, it's kept that tone throughout both games. I think that they're, whatever issues people may find with it, I don't think you could say that the tone changes.
Yeah.
I don't personally feel like the tone changes. I mean, I feel like obviously there is the theme of hate, which, Druckmann himself says that's the theme of the game. Maybe that's newer to a certain extent, but they still had that as in a certain sense in the first one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, anyway, we'll wrap up there. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you very much. This has been great.
Yeah, it's been an enjoyable chat.
It has.
I feel like we've stored a lot of this up for this conversation.
Oh man, I've been dying to talk about this. Yeah. So it's
been a fucking crazy ride.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for listening. There'll be probably more podcasts in the future with us too. I think there's something to do.
Yeah. We'll
we need to do some movies and stuff. Be good to do
films would be good. Films would be good.
Make another channel for that, I think. But
yeah. What would we call it?
Find out next time. I think it's something. I can't think of any names. But thank you very much for listening, and goodbye. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him. Oh, if I don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
And then we go through the door and escape into the real world, right?
Yeah. This is all fake.
Yeah. Last is 2 isn't real. Anyway. Bye. We don't have a cat say bye this time.
No, he's been locked out.
Because he was attacking a table leg.
Yeah.
Anyway, bye.
Why?